Welcome to the Morgans Edward Street weekly wrap for the week ending Friday the 27th of July. This time last week, the annual Noosa Mining Conference, of which Morgans is a proud sponsor, wrapped up. With over 1,000 delegates and 60 small cap miners presenting over 3 days, the conference has certainly earned its title as the Diggers and Dealers of the East. One of those delegates was Chris Brown, who joins me here today. Chris has been with Morgans for over 20 years and knows just about everything and everyone there is to know in this space. Before we start, please note that the comments in this video are general in nature, and please speak to your Edward Street advisor if you wish to know if any of the stock recommendations suit your personal needs and objectives. Morning, Chris, and thanks for joining us for the wrap.
Morning, Brett. Thanks for inviting me and thanks for the kind comments.
Before we discuss the conference today, let's start with the big news. This morning, BHP announced the sale of their US shale business to BP in a cash deal worth $10.8 billion US. What are your initial thoughts, firstly, over the price struck, and secondly, where's this place BHP going forward?
The price is a fair to good one. I think the market was looking for anywhere from about 9 to 13 billion US. So this is a 10.8. It's pretty close to our analyst Adrian Prendergast's valuation of 11 billion. So it's right in the channel. Price is fair. It's gone to BP. It was announced after the market, and I think the BHP was off during the day. But as I say, it was announced after the market. I think the market will like it. I guess we'll see how it opens in Australia. The expectation is, and I think they might have said that this money is going to go back to shareholders. So they've got a very strong balance sheet. They've been very sensible about capital investment, capital expansion, if this money comes back to shareholders along with a dividend, I think it could provoke some interest in BHP. Should provoke some interest in BHP.
Well, this significant news obviously from BHP, and obviously a lot of focus on Rio and Woodside recently. It seems that the small cap resources have been laggards over the last 18 months. Is it time to pay more attention to the space?
Yeah, I think it is, and also probably Woodside, and I think Rio as well. But you say they've been laggards, but whilst the index has been, some of the individual companies have been very strong performers. I think when you come down into the small cap area, you've got to actually look at the individual company, what it's doing, the sector it's in, and the news flow that's coming out of it, rather than the index as a whole. But you're quite right, the sector as a whole has lagged the large ones, right? People are looking for liquidity and trying to build their confidence again.
And look, out of the conference that we had obviously last week that we discussed before, what are your key 3 picks?
Well, Brad, I think I've got 2 that I can very comfortably talk about. One's Highlands Pacific, operating in Papua New Guinea. They've got a range of assets, but the primary one and the cash flow generator is their interest in the Ramu nickel cobalt project. Ramu produces a nickel cobalt mixed hydroxide product, which is exactly what the battery manufacturers want. About 10 parts of nickel to 1 of cobalt. The battery guys tend to want about 8 to 1 or 5 to 1, I think. The cash flow from Ramu is expected to be around $26–28 million US for the next 12 months, assuming nickel and cobalt stay where they are. So that's about 37 million Australian at the current price, call it 35. Market cap of Highlands is 140, so it's a very good cash flow multiple. You'd argue that should be trading at twice the price. You couldn't build the bit of kit that they own for 350 or 400 million Australian, so on the back of the capital sunk, it should be 2 or 3 times the price. So I think there's upside there. They've got other assets. They've got a 20% interest in the Freda River copper gold project with Graham, bit of a fractious joint venture, but it's worth something to them. Got some really good exploration ground in the Star Mountains in Papua New Guinea. That's worth something to them. And they've got the Siwa Bay nickel cobalt laterite project on Ferguson Island, which you could direct ship it to China, or perhaps in due course barge it around the coast to the Ramu project. So I think it's grossly undervalued, and I think it's a very strong nickel cobalt story. It's my first pick and standout pick. And the second one is PolarX, and I have to say that we participated in a placement by PolarX yesterday at at 11 cents, which I think was trading at 11.12 during the conference. It's exploration in Alaska. They've actually got a small copper gold project, Zackley, which is probably a bit too small to be commercial at this stage, but they're drilling it and getting some really good results, and I guess I'd expect it'll turn out to be at least 3 times the size, which means it will be commercial. But really that's sort of incidental. The real play, they're looking for big porphyry gold coppers in a belt which is known to have big porphyry gold coppers. A very strong management team. We've got good ground, strong technically aware shareholders, if I can put it like that. I think at this price it's going to be underpinned by the Zackley project, and who knows what the Truth Machine will find if they can drill into a porphyry copper gold. So there's my 2 favourite picks. Third favourite, I guess you could come down to bauxite producers like MMI, who will be generating cash and I think are undervalued, or you can go for a high risk exploration play where it's toss the coin in the air and it's heads or tails. And I guess if you want one of them, I'm going to go for Metalbank, MBK. It's a little Brisbane-based company, again very strong management, exploring around the old Norton Goldfield. A lot of the areas undercover. They're getting lots of high-grade gold hits, but it's starting to look like they might have a decent, large, intrusive gold copper porphyry at depth. They haven't drilled it yet, but all the signs are starting to point to that. So I'm quite keen on them as a very high-risk exploration play.
Right. You did mention Highlands as your key pick from the conference. One stock we've mentioned on the wrap in the past is Orocobre. Obviously in the process of building batteries. With the recent lacklustre share price of Orocobre, are you still bullish on the story and lithium in general?
Yeah, look, I am still bullish on lithium in general. I don't think, but we're hearing stories now about the potential for a dramatic expansion in lithium production, but the expansions and new developments never happen as well as the market's anticipating, and I think a lot of the hard rock guys are going to find it equally hard to expand, as indeed Orocobre did in starting up its brine operation. So I think the supply chain's going to be a little bit slower in coming on. I think demand's going to grow, but equally I'm not quite sure we really understand that. I mean, people talking about EVs, you're now starting to hear stories that internal combustion engine cars operate for less than 10% of the time. I've heard it's as low as 4%. As we move to EVs and potentially autonomous vehicles, I think you'll start to see much higher usage, less perhaps personal ownership of cars and a more communal type of ownership where motor vehicle usage might rise 30 or 40%, in which case you'd need a third as many vehicles running around. So, you know, what does that do to battery demand? But I still think it's a very good space to be. I think the graphite producers as well, I think they're going to do well. And I'm still very comfortable with Orocobre. It's moved back up in the short selling market. It was down to about 10 or 11th in the top 20. I think it's gone back up to number 5. I suspect people are a bit worried about the June quarterly production report, which I think is due out the end of this month. It was initially due out on the 22nd, but they've been playing with some of the data apparently, and so it's gone back a bit. I think the market might be concerned that production won't be up, but when you're producing this stuff for $4,000 a tonne and selling it for $10,000 a tonne, or more, 11 or 12, there's a very good margin there. So I think their revenue is going to be fine. I'm looking forward to their expansions.
Nice. Look, thanks, Chris. We really appreciate your comments, and lots going on in both the big and small end of the sector. Well, that's it for another wrap. Please feel free to share this video with your colleagues and friends, and make sure you like the Morgans Edward Street Stockbroking Facebook page, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel below. Have a great weekend. See you next time.